Well, it's time now for the ninth step that we have to take if we want to experience less stress in our lives. What we're trying to do here is to deal with what is causing the stress, because the stress is what leads to the anxiety, and many times it's the anxiety that leads to the depression. And so instead of just saying, let's do this for anxiety or this for depression, what I'm trying to do is take it back to its source and say, what can we do to dig out the root of the problem? Because if the root is dug out, then the rest of this stuff's going to just wane eventually as a result of that. And so today we come to step number 9, and that is give your mind time to recharge and to refresh. Now, I'm not a doctor. I sometimes wish I was, and sometimes I play like I am, but I'm not a doctor. I Google a lot on my phone, so I'm kind of a doctor, but not really. But the human brain is the most complex thing that God ever made, at least in my opinion. It's an organ, functions very much like a muscle, and if you've read much on the human brain and about the human brain, the mind, the way it functions, you know that it is absolutely amazing. But I read an article here a few weeks ago that said, and this is an oversimplification, but it said basically that our mind has 2 modes. It has the active mode and what you and I would probably call the passive mode. The article I read called it the default mode. And as the article was describing the active mode, that's what our brain is doing when we're processing information. When we are reading, when we're studying, when we're making a presentation at work, when we're in a serious conversation, man, our mind is active. We're in active mode. Like right now, my mind is active mode. I'm thinking about what I'm saying. You're on the other side of this camera, and so you may or may not, you may be in the passive mode, like, what is he rambling on about today? But like to do what I'm doing right now, my mind has to be focused and thinking. And so we spend a lot of time with our mind in the active mode. But here's what I found interesting. Even though our brains are organs, they function very much like a muscle. There is a small amount of muscle in our brain, but our brain functions like a muscle in that it needs rest in order to develop. If you go to the gym and work out, let's say you go to the gym on a Monday and you work out your back and you work out your biceps, okay? Well, when you go back on Tuesday, you're not going to work out your back and your biceps. You're going to work out your chest and your triceps, right? I mean, that's kind of the rotation there. And then the next day, you're going to work out your legs. Why don't you work out your biceps every day? Because if you worked out your biceps every day, your biceps would probably shrink instead of grow, because they need to be exercised, but then they need to rest. And it is while they're resting that they're actually growing. Well, since our brain functions like a muscle, then we have to give it that rest. And so the article I read was stressing this, that we need to let our minds be in the passive mode. Again, it called it the default mode. This is what happens when we daydream. It's what happens when we take a walk. It's what happens when we talk on the phone to a friend about things that are, what color do you think I should paint my kitchen? That type of thing. You're kind of like, that's good. That's a great thing to do. I do that a lot. But, to try to put your mind out of the active processing information mode that is in. And so when we put our mind in the passive mode and let it daydream, for example, if you have a long commute to work, I would imagine that even though sometimes you get frustrated with a long commute, if you were honest, you would say, you know what, that commute is actually something I enjoy, especially in the evening, because when I come home in the evening, I use that 30 or 40 minute commute to let my mind relax, air out, and by the time I get home, my day's behind me, and I can just give my full attention to my family. So I think, a 30-minute commute, even though I know, especially in the morning, that'd be a real headache probably, but there's an upside to it that you can you've got to pay attention while you're driving. I understand that, but you can also use that time to kind of let your mind rest, let your mind, relax a little bit. You're not having to process information quite as much. Now, it's interesting. When we let our minds rest and relax and daydream, that's when we become creative. That's when we get new ideas. That's when we're refreshed. That's when we're rejuvenated, because our mind is rested. Even you've probably noticed this, like you can go to bed at night, maybe with a problem on your mind, and you were trying to figure something out, but then you go and sleep for several hours and you wake up in the morning. At least when you first wake up, your mind is kind of like, wow, I feel relaxed. Now you may pick that problem back up and immediately begin to process it. So there you're kind of back in the doldrums again. But at least when you first wake up, it's kind of like, whoa, my mind feels clear. Well, it feels clear because during the night, it was in a passive mode. You were asleep. And so what we want to do is to let our mind rest. I'll give you the most recent example that I have had with this. Several weeks ago, maybe a month or two. It's been a while. I don't know how long, but it's been a while. I was having lunch with my parents on Sunday. I go over there on Sundays for lunch, and I always enjoy eating with them, talking to them. And since we're on we're just having the one service on Sunday morning. It's been online for the last little bit, and so time we get to Sunday lunch, we're not as tired as we normally would be if we had two full-blown services and, just a full Sunday morning. And so it's been a little more relaxing. And so I stayed over there a little bit longer, and we watched a movie at their house that day. And I don't remember what we watched, but I remember it was good. And then I left their house and I came back home to my house, and I sat in my den in there and turned the TV on, and I watched two more movies. I don't even watch movies. I watched more movies in that one day than I probably have all year. I may have watched more movies in that day than I have in the last 2 years. Maybe part of my problem. But I watched 3 movies in one day. And it's quite nice, quite relaxing. And when I woke up the next day, I started my Monday, and I started praying, and I said, now God, I've had it on my heart to write a booklet about when our heart is overwhelmed. And I don't know if you want me to do that or not, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit in this chair with a pen and some paper, and if you want me to write it, tell me what topics to address in this. And I started writing, and friend, I'm telling you something, I could not write fast enough. God was giving me insights, God was giving me thoughts, and within about a 30-minute period of time or less, I had a complete outline for how this book was supposed to come into being. Now, I'm going to tell you what I believe with all my heart. Part of the reason that happened, certainly it came from God. 100% of it came from God. But one of the reasons that I was able to hear from God as clearly as I did on that particular Monday is because on the day before, I had given my mind a chance to rest. And I don't typically wouldn't watch 3 movies in one day, but I did on that day. And it was a day of rest. It was a Sabbath day, I guess you would say for me on that, in some form of a Sabbath. It was certainly a day of rest, and it was a day of re-energizing and recharging my mind. And I think without doing that, if I would have just come home from having lunch with him that day and said, okay, I want to start my next sermon for next Sunday, or start a project, or even start writing or doing something, I don't think that would have been good for me, because my mind needed a chance to rest. And so what I'm saying to you is, I'm not saying that everybody should watch 3 Sundays or three movies on the weekend, but I'm saying we should probably maybe watch one a month, or do something that would let our minds relax. You can go to the mall, you can sit out on the back porch and watch the birds, watch the squirrels, or you can go to the park, or you can go to the lake, or you can do something. Play golf, that's great, exercise. But give your brain a break, and don't always be trying to figure something out. Even if you're not thinking about painting your kitchen, try to figure out what color you would paint it if you were going to paint your kitchen. I do that all the time around my house with projects. Well, I could do this or that. And sometimes I'll do the project, and sometimes I don't. But it's good for me to think about it. So there's your assignment. Give your mind a chance to rest, and give it a chance to take a break. And even, for example, if you're working at your desk, every couple of hours, take a little 10-minute break and just walk around, go outside, daydream, look up at the sky, see what's trending on Twitter. I mean, do something to let your brain not have to think quite so seriously, and see if that doesn't help you with the stress. Have a great day. Look forward to being with you next time. Bye-bye.